Good evening, everyone. I'm so grateful that you decided to tune in today. Again, this is our new format of our virtual Bible study. I promise not to hold you long. Just like I said, you'll be out before Pat Sajak when we met in person. Now it's Ryan Seacrest. But whenever you decide to turn it on, I still won't hold you long. But I'm just so grateful that we have this opportunity to share in God's Word. So listen, as last week, we started talking about rebuilding the relationship with our first sibling example, which is Cain and Abel. That is in Genesis chapter 4. And I really want to continue our conversation with that about rebuilding the relationship between our brother and our sister, our sibling relationship as it relates to how we interact with one another here at the church or at your job, wherever you find a relationship at. The first example that we have is not a very good example because it actually ends in tragedy, but we can glean from it some nuggets of truth to help us in our day to day lives so that we know how to handle one another in a more better way. So in Genesis chapter 4, again, I'm going to verse number 9 is our verse of highlight where God goes looking and he said, Cain, where is Abel? And Cain's response is, am I my brother's keeper? And I want to just harp on that just for another moment or two, just to let us know that, yes, we are our brother and our sister's keeper. There should be a genuine concern about the well being of one another. We are not just here to fill up seats, to shout amen, but not be able to get along or to have a genuine love for one another. The church has failed in this aspect of actually teaching us how to build relationships. Relationships are key. Matter of fact, we're introduced to a relationship because God says that he sent his only begotten son. He didn't say, I sent my mule. He didn't say, I sent my coins. He didn't say, I sent the house. He said, I sent my only begotten son. I put a relationship on the line to get a relationship from the line because that's what God had in mind when he created us, is that he wanted to create us for relationship. And if you look at the book of Genesis starts with a foundation, but yet it ends with a family. And chapter 1, we see the foundation, how God is getting it set. And he starts with a man named Adam. And then from Adam, he takes out Eve. And then from Eve, we see Cain. And then we see Abel. And then if you hang on in there, we see Seth. But it all starts from this is the foundation. And then by the time we get to the end of Genesis, we see a family. We see a nation. We see the 12 sons of Judah or of Jacob, the 12 sons of Jacob. And then we start to see the family aspect begin to evolve. Now, if you just indulge me for a moment today, I want to take my time because I actually want to bring more out than I did last week. Because in verse number 1, it said Adam slept with Eve, and then she conceived Cain. And then he said, now the Lord has helped me acquire a man. The Lord has helped me acquire the victory. Now, you have to understand is that Adam is naming that based upon what he thought he lost. So when he's naming Cain, he's actually naming something based upon what he assumed he lost. Because Adam thought because of his mess up, he ruined his identity. He no longer saw himself as what God had created him to be in Genesis chapter 2. But if you look at it, God never changed his mind about Adam's identity. He only changed his mind about Adam's preference. Adam now had to toil and to work. Things would not come to him as easily as it once had because he disobeyed God. What we have to understand, my brother and sister, is that God is not trying to ruin us. God may just be evolving us. And sometimes he uses consequences not to tear down our identity, but to help us evolve into a new way of living. So therefore, your consequences are not to destroy you, but rather to develop you. You are still the apple of God's eye. You are still saved. You are still the beloved of God. You and I, although we have frailties and although we have failures, we cannot let that overlap his faithfulness. God is still a faithful God. Look at Lamentations chapter 3 and around verse number 21. He says, "This I recall to my mind, therefore I have hope, that it's by the Lord's mercies that we are not consumed." Watch this. Great is his faithfulness. Mercy is only there to wipe away your mistakes. I'm going to say that one more time. Mercy is only given to wipe away your mistakes. So therefore, if you don't have a mistake, then you don't need mercy. But watch this. It never changes your identity. Mercy only reinstates who you are. Because if mercy was there to wipe out your mistake, then that means that God sees you beyond your mistake. Woo! That's good for teaching tonight, because you have got to see yourself beyond your mistake. You have got to see yourself beyond your difficulty. You've got to see yourself beyond your disappointment, because although you may have fallen short, guess what? His grace doesn't fall short. His mercy doesn't fall short. It actually fills in the gap because he loves us. He takes time to let us know how much he loves us. Now, this is important. If you skip down to the end of Genesis chapter 4, at the last verse, it said, or the last two verses, verse number 25, verse number 26 of Genesis chapter 4, it said, Adam slept with his wife again. She had a son. They named him Seth. She said, the Lord has given me another child in place of Abel, whom Cain killed. And Seth had a son whom he named Enosh. And look at it. Look at it. It's right there. That's when men and women began praying and worshiping the name of God. Could you imagine if you didn't end the chapter? Whoa, man, that's good. Right here. That's good. Imagine if you didn't end the chapter the way that you should have started the chapter. Imagine if Adam and Eve began praying and worshiping before they named Cain. Because when you and I begin to pray, when you and I begin to seek God's opinion, watch this now. Because God gave us dominion over the earth, which means he cannot break the landlord lease agreement. He cannot break the landlord tenant agreement. He cannot enter in, although he owns it, without permission. And if you and I would give God permission to enter in what he already owns, he knows what is good for. I'm finna run around this church by myself. Because you and I, what we do is exactly what Adam and Eve did. Because of sin, we invite God in afterwards. But what if we invited God in in the forefront? What if we started the chapter praying and worshiping? Matter of fact, that's what we need to do today, and make a commitment to do tomorrow. That before I grab my cell phone, before I even open my mouth to speak to my spouse, maybe I need to spend a little bit of time with God and invite God into my day, invite God into my conversation. Because Adam, because he did not have a conversation with God, he named Cain off of something that he already had. He functioned out of his insecurity. He functioned out of his ability to overcompensate because he thought he lost something. See, you and I, we begin to overcompensate when we don't feel as though we're enough. But my brother and sister, when you invite God in, he lets you know that you're more than enough. Woo! See, when you invite God, if God be for you, who can be against you? That includes yourself. You can't even be against yourself if God is for you. You can't speak negativity to yourself if God is for you. You can't displace yourself. Watch this. If God is for you, let's not end the chapter the way that we should have started the chapter. So maybe Cain, again, his name means possession. So therefore, because Cain is not right, he's not able to see Abel. Ooh, he's not able to see the value in his brother. He's not able to see the value in himself. But he's not able to see that because of how Adam named him. Man. So if Adam had have done the work, Cain might have been better off. Abel may have been alive because Adam didn't see it. Cain couldn't see it. Abel was the victim. There will always be a victim in your dysfunction. We have got to do the work of inviting God in to transform our heart so that we can see a better value system in ourselves, in our children, and in our children's children. Maybe what needs to be corrected is how you see yourself before you begin to put your mouth on somebody else. Let's invite God into our conversation. Now, watch this. Paul even says it like this. We need to greet people with psalms and spiritual songs and with a holy kiss, which means that I should greet you with love. I shouldn't just say, how you doing? You all right? And not be ready for the truth of you not being okay. And if you're not okay, being able to speak life into you instead of tearing you down about how you're always going through something. Maybe I should put my hand in your hand and begin to pray the prayer of faith because I see you, watch this now, as God sees you beyond your mistake, beyond your difficulty, beyond your disappointment. Because if I'm not being able to see that, I'm doing exactly what Cain is. I'm treating you as a possession and not a person. See, when you have possessions, we do care how we look, but as anything, fads change. So therefore, if it's a possession, it can be put on the shelf. See, sometimes we treat people like they're fads. We put them on the shelf, and then when they come back in style, we pick them back up again. No, that is not showing a value system. And if that is how you have been treated throughout the years, where people have picked you up and put you down at their leisure, then you need to pray to God for a better circle. Because God will send people in your life that see your value, that see you above and better than your mistake, your hang up, and your disappointment. Now let's get back to the text because I don't just want to stop there because I also want to draw something else out of this to be able to help us. Abel was, according to Genesis chapter 4, verse number 2, Abel was a herdsman and Cain was a farmer. Then it became time for them to give an offering to God. Now, watch this. They still are not praying. They still are not worshiping, but yet they're still giving an offering. This is, oh man, this is good. I promise you it's good. The reason why Cain couldn't see a value of God is because he did not pray. I'm going to say it again for the people in the back, even though it's just me. Let me turn and face you a little bit stronger. Although Cain was giving, Cain set aside an offering. It was not his best because he did not see the value of God. You cannot see the value of God without prayer and without worship. Woo! So therefore, when I'm trying to talk about tithe and offering, if you don't spend time with God, you don't see him as worthy of your offering. And you just continue to give God what you think is best and not actually what he deserves. Man, that is good in here tonight because you allow your depreciation of yourself to cause you to depreciate who God is in your life. Let's take a look at the text because he's named based upon Adam's failure. Adam thought his identity changed. Now, if we go over to Genesis chapter 3, and if we look at verse number 9 in Genesis chapter 3, God called to the man. This is after Adam had ate the fruit. God called unto the man, and he said, "Where are you?" He said, "I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid." God's response is, "Who told you that you were naked?" Whoa. Which means Adam had a definition about himself that God didn't give him. He gave that same definition to his son, Cain. So therefore, Cain can't see value in himself because he is named after Adam's failure. And because he's named after Adam's failure, this is what he thinks about himself. And he does not see value within himself to understand that he could give better because he is better. Wow. Man, that is good in here tonight. See, I don't have to tell you to give when you are a worshiper and somebody who is seeking God's face. Nobody has to be pumped up to give God something that has been seeking his face and spends time with him in worship because you understand the value system and you understand that maybe God told you something about yourself and now you see him at a greater level. See, Adam functioned out of nakedness and shame, and then he named something. Oh man, this is good. I'm fitting to run around tonight. And because he did that, Cain couldn't see God properly. And because he couldn't see God properly, watch this now, he treated God lesser than. And because he treated God lesser than, he now enters into competition with his brother. All because, watch this, he didn't spend time with God. The reason why you may be having so much beef and conflict in your life is because you need to spend a little bit more time with God. Your brother and your sister is not the issue. You are the issue because you decided you didn't want to spend time with God. You rather put it at the end of your chapter instead of the opening of your chapter. Here we are, my brothers and sisters. If you continuously find yourself in conflict, it's not the other person, it's you. May we, as the Cain tonight, take a look in the mirror, not be identified by Adam's own failure, because that's what he named him out of. And then he overcompensated, thinking that Cain was going to be the possession to restore his identity. That's something right there. You don't have to overcompensate. God makes you more than enough. Invite God into your life in the front end and then watch the blessings that follow on the back end. We don't have to devalue one another to get ahead. Because as I said, and I'm going to get to this next week, Cain ended up killing Abel. And when he killed Abel, watch this now, his blood still cried out. Because even you tearing down somebody does not wipe away their existence. The way you gossip about them doesn't change God's mind about their life. The way you backbite, man, it doesn't change God's mind. I wish you a very, very peaceful night. But in this Bible study tonight, what I want you to get is that before we build successful relationships with one another, we have to build a successful relationship with us and God. And then once we build that right, with us and God, it doesn't matter what mama named you. It doesn't matter what society named you. It doesn't matter what your blood relatives still swear by you. When you invite God in, you adopt his DNA for your life. You adopt his definition for your life. And therefore, us as Cains, that yes, we were mishandled. Yes, we were misnamed. But that does not give us the right to treat somebody lesser than. May we invite God in to do the work on us so that we see the value in somebody else. God's peace. Good journey. I love you. Hope to see you on Sunday.